So, well, first of all, thank you for having me. It's my first time in Ukraine, so that's really nice. I'm really happy to be here. Also, yeah, I say my name Jordi Boggiano. I don't know if this actually matches. I mean, I can kind of read it, and I think it's fairly good, but we just did it by email, so I tried to explain how to pronounce my name. It wasn't easy. So, alright. So, in case you don't know me, I'm maintaining Composer and Packages, and also Monologue and a bunch of other things. And like the only thing this means is I have quite a bit of experience in terms of managing open source projects. And I thought after so many years of doing it, it would be interesting to kind of share my point of view and hopefully get you a better understanding of what open source means from also the maintainer side, which I don't know how many of you maintain an open source project. Okay, that's quite a few, that's cool. So for the others, I think it will be very important. For you, it's maybe some good tips as well for how to deal with that. Yeah, we'll see. So let's look first at what maintenance means really. If we have like the whole project lifetime, at first, in my experience at least, if it's a successful project, you have excitement and like people, you know, they're trying it out and they're like, oh yeah, that's awesome, I really love it. And it was just, the first few months were really cool. We had so much good feedback from people, as many people were trying Composer and so on. And then pretty quickly it becomes a commodity. And so it's just part of the scenery, people are used to having that tool, and as soon as it doesn't quite work like it's supposed to, it's, you know, like you get people complaining because it's been working for 2 minutes. I'm like, 2 minutes, come on, like, do you know how much time it would take you to actually compute all those dependencies yourself? Like, it doesn't seem that bad to me, but that's the thing, like people get used to something and then if you take a little piece away, they start complaining a lot. We also get, you know, the usual XKCD like rip-offs. You can't blame them, that was bound to happen. This one I really liked as well, just someone that tweeted this image with Angry Mark and Angry Patrick. They're just so mad at Composer that stays slow. And okay, why not? The good side though is you get things like this, all those fake like accounts that just start posting jokes about your project as well. If you're at the level where everyone is using it or everyone knows about it, that's the upside. It's like you get part of the community in the larger scale. Like this one saying if you want to update to PSR4 support, just type rm-rf. Yeah. Don't ever listen to the PHP jerk. And finally, like we get to this maintenance phase of the project, right? And what this means, on this website you have stats about your GitHub account, and you see, so you see when I'm working and so on, but that's not so interesting. I think what's really interesting is here, this huge part is just issue comments. So that's like half of what I do on GitHub is commenting on issues. And that is very scary, I think. Then you have this one is new issues, which pretty much falls in the same, it's just like talking to people and, you know, typing text, not typing code. The only thing we have really is like pushes, that's the yellow part here. So it's like a tiny sort of very, very small part of the work is actually coding at that point. It's more sort of politics of, you know, discussing with people and figuring out what they want or support and so on. Like it's a lot of talking and not a lot of coding. So it's something to keep in mind. So now that we see what maintenance is, I want to go a bit deeper into a few like specific aspects. So the first one is time. And I'd like to know, like, who of you has to compromise at work just because of, you know, a deadline, like you had to skip on tests or maybe do a bit sloppy implementation, like, how many really? Like, come on. Yeah, it's like about everyone, I guess. So usually it goes like this, right? In business, you have the client that comes and they want all of this, and they have money for that much, and it doesn't quite add up. So you need to cut pieces somehow. And in open source, the issue is we tend to not have a budget at all. So you can see where this is going. It's not good. Because, yeah, people tend to want like everything, really. There's just no limit to what, you know, the new features that people will ask. There's just everything out there. And there's just no budget. Mostly you're doing this in your free time and so on, so yeah, there's a big like power struggle there between having no time at all, well, like no paid time, and having to implement pretty much anything. So this can lead to work-life balance issues pretty quickly if you don't pay attention. So this, I think, is also an interesting way to visualize it. So that's the contribution graph on GitHub. I guess you're familiar with that. So it shows like per day how many contributions you did, and if it's gray like here, it's just nothing at all. And this was the graph of someone working for Mozilla that is paid for doing open source. Right? So it's their day job to do open source. So you clearly see like Monday to Friday, it's like work, work, work. And at the weekend, like Saturday and Sunday up there, pretty much nothing. So this is like sort of a healthy pattern, I guess. And then you have this model where you have like work non-stop until you burn out and just completely crash and stop doing anything. And this is not good, right? I guess you can see that it's definitely not sustainable. Like this one just continues forever, kind of, and this one falls apart, and it's not a good thing. And like I had a bit the same where like a few years ago I was just working pretty much all the time, and then last year, like in summer, I just crashed. I was like, I'm sick of this. I can't take open source anymore. I can't see one more GitHub email and so on. So, I mean, I managed to pick back up, so it's not too bad, but if you look here, it's like 2 or 3 months of pretty much nothing. Because I was just not reading emails anymore from GitHub, and I was done with that. So, I think it's very important to kind of learn those signs of when you're burning out, and like just to try and prevent it before it happens, like before you get to the point where it's too much and you actually crash down. So yeah, I don't know, like it's something we don't tend to talk a lot about in the industry, I think, but it's also, I think it's very important because well, I don't know how many of you would consider themselves like a passionate developer, but I think we do tend to have a lot of passionate people that really enjoy what they do at work, and that tends to make you do a bit too much of it. Like you want to do everything, and you stay on and on at work, and then yeah, at some point you crash. So I don't know, fixing the stage. So yeah, it's just try to keep this in mind. Like if you get irritated with everything and so on, like remember this and try to fix it, because usually it's not really that your boss is yelling at you to work more. It's usually more that like people inflict this upon themselves, that they say, okay, I want to do this all myself, and at some point it becomes too much. So what you can do on the other side, like just to help with this issue of time, is to avoid like wasting time, right? So this kind of issue, I think, is pretty like wasteful. It's just someone arguing that the logo is not actually a composer, but it's a conductor, you know, because like the conductor is conducting the orchestra and the composer is writing the music. So this is completely correct. But I also don't care, right? I'm not gonna change the logo, I'm not gonna change the name, it's fine, it doesn't matter. So this is kind of it's a funny issue, but it's also a waste of time. This one is even worse, like that wasn't on my project, thankfully, because I would have closed that pretty quick. But there was someone arguing about the dash, so the minus sign, between the 2 years in the license, right? So we're not talking about anything of consequence, it's really only about this dash in the license file, which nobody ever will look at, but really this one dash, it should be this other one dash that's a bit longer or something. I don't remember what they were arguing for, but it's just, it's absurd. Like, it does not make any sense to, like, you see here, it's 20 comments on this before they finally closed it. It's insane. So yeah, just try to avoid doing that. The plus ones as well, like, that's one that really annoys me, because so this guy put this very well, I think. He says, how many programmers does it take to plus one an issue asking for someone else to screw in a light bulb, right? And this, like, I find it very smart, because it really highlights the problem that people are saying, hey, yeah, plus one, like me too, I want this stuff done, I want this stuff done. And like when you have 20 people saying they want something done, maybe it's time for one of them to move off their chair and actually do it, right? Like it's something that I feel uneasy when I see those like plus ones. I'm like, okay, you know, it's good information that you all want this, but why is nobody stepping up and actually doing something about it? Because yeah, again, we're not paid for this mostly. A little one, like if you have an issue and you manage to fix it yourself, or if it's 2 years later, it's not relevant anymore, try and come back and close them, because open issues tend to just pile up and it's not easy to see what's going on at some point. So, yeah, that's it for time. Now I want to go to pride. And I think pride is one of the main reasons I do this. There are many aspects, but like one of them is just seeing people using, you know, something I built to build something else. That's really nice. Like, it just feels good to have an impact on the world, I think. And you know, in this case it was Spotify, but I know of many other. There are many large companies that use Composer, that use Symfony, and so on. Like, it's just things I built. Obviously, it doesn't mean like I built Spotify, but you know, if I enabled them to do it a bit better, a bit faster, cool. Like, that feels nice. Another side is like just giving pride to other people. I think that's nice. Like when you have people submitting their first pull request, or you know, it's maybe even the first pull request to this project, even if they're already contributing to other stuff. You know, people are really happy about this. When you merge it, they feel like they did something, and they join this big open source family, and it means something. So that's cool to have this chance of giving that to people. And finally, there's also the aspect of learning. Like in this case, I mean, it doesn't matter what it is, but it's just, you know, I commented on something, and the guy was saying, "Oh yeah, that's cool. I've been doing that for 10 years. I didn't know." So, you know, he learned something. Me as well, I learn a lot while reviewing code. So yeah, it's just a lot of good feelings and not so good ones sometimes. So anger. Yeah, I'm just gonna let you read this for a second while I read. I have a drink. So, you see, there are very angry people sometimes. And these were only 3 tweets out of 7. There were just 7 tweets like that, following like within 5 minutes. And I woke up, because I think he's from Australia, and I woke up and I see that, and I'm like, okay, cool. And then, you know, complaining about you're non-responsive. It's like, yeah, I'm sleeping, I'm sorry. but also, what do you want to respond to this? Like, this is just so silly. Like, first of all, the point he was making was about, you know, Solr versus Elasticsearch, which I really don't think matters at all. But especially as a user of the website, I don't see how this impacts him. So yeah, just like this whole rant, I was like, okay, whatever. This is not, you know, it's not worth my time. It's not really worth getting offended about, because it's just too, like, it's too much, right? It's too silly. On the other hand, things like this, I mean, I kind of laugh about it now, but if you look at this is a locomotive, like from a, you know, the driving car of the train that went through a building because it didn't stop on time. Like, this was in the early 20th century or something. So that's just like really bad crash. And they photoshopped the composer logo on it. Cool. This one is photoshopped with a rope going around the neck, right? It's like a hangman composer. And I'm thinking, like, I saw this picture like just show up on Twitter, and they weren't really tweeting it at me, but I have searches and stuff, and so I spotted that. And I'm thinking, okay, like, someone was really so mad at the project that they actually collected these images somehow, printed them, and went to the wall, like, wasted 2 nice stickers to put them on the wall, and then took a photo and then tweeted that. And it's like, it's a whole process that, you know, you really have to be mad about it to do that. And I'm like, oh, man, come on, like, this kind of hurts, because obviously, you know, they are not directing it at me, but you can't really disconnect yourself from your project, right? To some extent, it's your baby, and when people are just really angry about it, it does affect you. So this is like, yeah, that's a bit less nice. But then again, like, I think all the stuff I take is nothing compared to, like, this is an extract from a blog post by Lennart Poettering, and he maintains systemd. So I don't know if you follow the systemd debates in the Linux community, but they're pretty heated. And so he had like those petitions for him to stop working, and people collecting bitcoins to get him killed. Like, this is pretty serious shit, I think. Like, just, yeah, a bunch of websites that are calling people to stop using systemd and so on. It's just, this is really sick, I think. Like, it's people going way too far. Like, it's about code. Like, we're talking about code, and people bring it to the personal level. Like, this is, you know, we're not talking about he feels bad that someone attacked his baby. It's like, someone is trying to kill him. It's really bad. Like, it's really, really fucked up. And like, I think the way to look at this is, like, I think this quote is pretty interesting. They say the culture of any organization or group is shaped by the worst behavior the leader is willing to tolerate. And this rings very true when you look back to the previous example. At the top of the Linux community, you have Linus Torvalds, and if you read him a bit, like his answers on the mailing list and so on, you might know that he tends to be very, very insulting towards people. He's like extremely direct, and in a way that is sometimes really like personal as well. And so that just trickles down to the whole project, right? The whole community starts behaving like him, and those people that don't like this, they leave the community, and at the end you have just a whole project full of the same people that behave, I would say, like assholes. It's a technical term, but it's, I really think it's a shame, because, you know, if you're not careful, you end up with a community where like nice people don't want to be a part of anymore. But on the other side, like, if you do behave nicely, and if you treat people with respect, and you kind of enforce that people interacting with your project treat other people with respect as well, otherwise you just kick them out, then, you know, the community tends to be a lot nicer. And you see that with languages as well, right? Like, overall, the programming language communities tend to have very different feel to them. And if you go to another conference somewhere else about Ruby or JavaScript, or, you know, it's gonna be a different feeling. I'm not saying they're all bad. Like, they're all good in some ways, I'm sure, but it's, you know, it's different. So if you want to affect that, I think this is a pretty good thing. This like open source code of conduct, it's already written for you, so you just have to put it there. And then the catch is, if you put it in your project, you should actually enforce it, right? And respect it yourself, especially, because if you put this link on top and say, yeah, we welcome everyone, and then someone comes and you tell them, oh, this code is so terrible, you're an idiot, go away. This is not, this is defeating the point. So I think it's very important that if you have it, you respect it and you enforce it. But yeah, all it says really is like, we will treat you as a human being. And I mean, it's a bit longer, but down the line, it's just that. It's just being nice to other people. Like, you can say that, this is not a good patch. I don't want to merge this. This is fine. But don't call someone an idiot because the patch is not good. Like, it doesn't achieve anything. Another point there is like to avoid just going down into those spirals of like kind of flame war stuff. Yeah, like if you have, so this is not a very angry tweet, right? It's just saying, oh, PHP, like composer makes me sad in so many ways. And I just answered, I'm like, look, like, can you explain? Like, I could have gone, okay, oh, they're so mean to me, or they're so mean to composer, I'm just gonna answer back, tell them they're an idiot. But what would have, like, if I do that, it doesn't achieve anything. They would have gone back to me like, no, you're the idiot, and then it just goes down and down until the internet explodes or something. So, just going back to the facts and saying, okay, look, you feel so sad in so many ways, cool. Let's just forget about this, can you explain me why? Like, what is wrong about the project? And then you see directly, like, the response is much more positive, and they just explain what's going on, and obviously, by the time they read this, it's also like 5 minutes later, maybe they cool down and they're like less aggressive as well, so that's good. On the other hand, like, sometimes it goes too far, like this guy going, yeah, like, blah blah blah, you don't want to do it my way, so you're just stupid, and because you wrote it in your free time doesn't mean you escape the criticism. I'm like, okay, yeah, so you call me an idiot, cool, that's a good start to the discussion. And then like this last point I find interesting because, saying that I don't escape the criticism, I fully agree with, but to me, this is abuse and it's not criticism. Like, calling me an idiot is not criticizing the code, right? Like, there's a distinction there to be made. And so I just locked the conversation and walked away, and I had a much nicer day after that. So, I think it's okay. It's also okay to use these tools that you have on GitHub to say, hey, look, like, this went too far. I'm done here. Bye. Like, if you feel like having an adult conversation, you can open a new issue and maybe we'll talk again, but this is just done. Okay, that's it for the angry thoughts. So, misunderstandings tend to happen a lot, mostly because we're just people and communication is hard, like even when you speak the same language, but then you also have a big planet full of languages and everyone is working on the same stuff more or less in English, and for most people English is not the native language, and so that tends to end up with like very weird discussions sometimes. So I think it's important to really think about it, like when you read someone's comments, to think about if you really understood it or not, and if not, just try to ask, hey, like, look, I don't get this, or what are you trying to do? Like in this case, someone wanted to change some code in Monologue, it doesn't really matter what, but I was just, okay, I don't get this, like, why are you doing this? Can you please explain me the use case or something? Then we discussed a bit, and in the end, we figured out, okay, he just does not know how to use a debugger, so, we say, okay, look, here's how you use your debugger better, and, now you can move on and we don't need this patch, and all good. Another point is, like, to respect the coding style. I think, I don't really enforce this very much, but in this case, that's just totally absurd to me. Is someone coming and saying, hey, look, I just changed your entire code to this Airbnb syntax specification. And I'm like, what just happened? Because I never heard of the Airbnb syntax specification, and also go away. Like, what is this? It's just, you don't come to someone just changing the whole code without even discussing it first. Like, this makes no sense. So, you know, if you make a mistake while sending a pull request, that's one thing, fair enough, but this is like, whoa. And similarly, like, I think it's really important, if you want to do big changes or potentially controversial changes, open an issue first and discuss it, right? Like, if you just say, here's a bunch of code, I wrote like 2,000 lines, yay, I see that, I'm like, first reaction is just, I don't want to look at it, because it's so many lines, I know it's going to take me forever to review it, so, you know, like, the first reaction you get is like, and that's not something you want to create, right, when you send a pull request. So discussing it beforehand can really help to get it accepted easier, because you can discuss how to approach the problem. But also in some cases like this one, we had like, you know, 800 lines, 57 commits. This is a lot of time spent. Like, in the description they were saying, look, we just spent like, we had this new intern spend 2 weeks on this, and you know, can you please, and then I look at the patch and I'm like, look, I'm sorry, but I can't accept this. Like, it does not make sense to me. So can you please explain why you want, like, what's the point? And we discussed for 10 minutes, and then after 10 minutes they were like, oh yeah, okay, we can do it that way then. We don't need the patch. And I'm like, wow, this is like, you know, it's good because we found a solution, I'm glad, but I felt really bad about closing it when I know that someone spent 2 weeks of their time on it, and you know, it's not a good feeling for me either, right? Like, everyone kind of wastes their time, and it's not good. So if they had come up with the discussion beforehand, those 2 weeks were saved. Guilt is, well, yeah. I don't know who of you knows the Bumblebee project. It's a Ruby project, and I don't know what it does, but I just saw it once on Hacker News, and it was on top of Hacker News because they fucked up, basically. They had a really bad bug, and it was, whenever you used it, it was just erasing the entire drive. So, like, they had a rmrf slash, and then they put a space in between the slash and the variable, so it just took slash first and erased everything. So that was not good, and then like one morning I just, you know, check my email and I see this, and it's like, yeah, create project, erase my hard drive. I'm like, oh man, this is not gonna be good. So yeah, I really felt bad that day. Like, I thought, you know, I'm never gonna work again. That's it. Like, but yeah, it turned out okay. Like, it was really just this one person managed to trigger a bug. Well, a bug. Like, they did something really silly and it ended bad, let's say. But you know, it happens. But yeah, sometimes like you mess up and you feel really guilty because you have, like, even though you know nobody pays you for this, you do feel some amount of responsibility. Then communication, there are a few points there. I think one of them is just to say thank you to people when, like, you know, when you merge a pull request or something. I mean, I don't do it all the time when it's people that I know and that are familiar with the project, but especially if it's a new contributor to the project, I try to just say, hey, thanks for the pull request, it's merged. You know, it doesn't take you a lot of time, but it kind of puts some human back in the whole deal, because on GitHub it's very dehumanized at this point. It's like you get a pull request, you just hit the merge button and done. Like, there is absolutely no discussion. Yeah, that was another little trick. Just adding this like easy pick tag on issues, that can be a good way to communicate to people, hey, look, these are like things that are probably easy enough to work on. If you're not familiar with the project, you probably can dive in you know, and do this within an hour or something. Like you don't have to know everything about the project. So that's just a good way to attract contributors, maybe. Then you have also communication around issues, right? Like people reporting problems like this is totally not helpful, and I just tend to, sometimes I make fun of them. And then you go like, okay, no, it's fine, it was just a typo in the composer JSON. Cool, it's solved. But you know, like really, like if you want to report something, just explain what you're trying to do, what went wrong, and like why it's not working or why you think it's not working. Because just saying, do you have problems? It's like, I don't know, maybe. So yeah, just try and do that. And you might notice that if you have to explain what and why, and explain this in a way that anyone can understand it, it probably does not fit in 140 characters. So it's probably a good idea to go on GitHub, which is like, you know, it has an issue tracker, and this is kind of the way to report issues. So like Twitter tends to be a bit fire and forget, and even if it makes sense, if I get it, you know, 5 minutes later it's gone from the timeline. Like so please use GitHub. Then community, that's also the other main reason I do this, I think. Like this whole open source thing is, you know, conferences like today, I think that's a big part of why I enjoy this whole thing. This cake as well, I mean today we had conference and cake, so that's pretty awesome. But like that's just a cake I got in the mailbox one day, and I was like, what the hell, like can you actually mail cake to people? This was pretty interesting. But yeah, you know, it was like for the 3 years of Composer, I think, and yeah, that was fun. You also have like, you know, fun things in the community, like when last year we fixed this GC disable thing. You might remember it or not, it doesn't matter, but you know, we had like 500 comments that someone like called a GIF portal, because most of the comments had a GIF in it. And so yeah, that's like just a small part of it, and now if you open this page, I mean, mostly it will just crash your browser, you know. So but yeah, that's like, it's good fun to be part of this community, and I think that's a really important side. Finally, we have contribution. So if you look at small pull requests, I think they matter a lot, because they're a bit the gateway drug, right? Like if you say, okay, to someone, just, you know, come and fix this typo in the documentation, it gets them beyond this barrier of like being scared of contributing something, or, you know, if you're not sure, if you're just afraid of getting a bad review on your code and so on. At least there you get kind of involved in the process with simple changes. So I think it's very important to encourage those. Then on the other hand, it's also important to remember that like there are no really small pull requests. Like there's so many times this happened to me that there's this one line change. I'm like, oh yeah, that looks good. This is a small change, fine. Just merge it. Don't even check the tests. Who cares? And then, you know, it's actually, there's a missing use statement or something silly like that, and the whole composer is down, and, you know, like everyone that updates to the latest composer just cannot use it anymore, and, you know, like really bad consequences can happen from sometimes really like trivial looking changes. So it's, yeah, it leads to paranoia slowly, where you go like any change can actually blow up everything. So you have to be very careful, and so that means, yeah, like merging stuff does take time, and the bigger the pull request, the more time it will take, and you just have to keep that in mind and be a bit patient when you interact with projects. Yeah, I just mentioned this already, but really, like if you never contributed anything, just don't be afraid. Like it's okay. You know, most people won't attack you if the code you send them is not good or something. It's, you know, most people are nice. And sometimes I'm sure it happens that you know, someone has a bad day or something, but there's really no reason to be afraid, I think. And there are other ways to help as well, right? Like with documentations, or even just like triaging issues, like just going on GitHub and looking at issues, seeing, okay, I can reproduce these tools, I'm just gonna write a comment, add a bit more information and so on, just so someone else can maybe fix it easier. Like there's a ton of stuff you can do. And if you do want to contribute something and you don't know what, I would say just look at the projects you're using and find something that when you use it, it just annoys you. It's like it's not good enough. You know, every time you do something, you have to go around stuff and find workarounds. And this is usually a sign that something could be done better. And I contribute there, I don't mean you don't necessarily have to fix it yourself, but just sending an issue and saying, hey, look, you know, I'm trying to do this, and every time I try to do this, it just doesn't go well. You let the project maintainer know that that's a use case that's, you know, being like the people are using their project for, and maybe they can find a good solution for you in 2 minutes, right? So it's very important to talk. So to sum up, I would say like open source to me is a lot more than just like putting code out there, right? Like when you have a private repo and the company decides, yeah, let's do open source, flipping the switch to public is not enough, right? It's not just that to have open source. And from the other perspective, it's also, I think, more than just getting free stuff from everywhere, right? Which is nice, but there's a bit more to it than that. To me, it's all this. Like it's like reviewing pull requests and you know, having a proper README and like getting people to contribute and so on. A lot of community work as well, like this Stack Overflow or IRC or so on, like all this support stuff. Like if you look at this, like the entire list, this is stuff you can do. Like anyone can do this on any project. Like I think that merging pull requests is not in the list, so that's the only privilege that the maintainer has, really, is the ability to say, hey, okay, this makes it in or not. But everything else, anyone can just go into a project and start helping. So really there's no reason not to. So for maintainers, I think yes, it can be tough. Sometimes, you know, it's a lot of people like asking for things, and they don't really like give you anything back mostly. So you can kind of feel like this yeah, you're just surrounded by ungrateful people, and it puts you down slowly. So just if you get in this mood, like try and step back and take a break, and then and come back to it when you feel better, because like quitting is not so nice. And if you do come back, you know, there might be cake as well, so it's always good. And then finally, like this, I think was very important to say that if you consume open source software, you really should be nicer to those that build it. And like this is applicable not only to, you know, I'm not saying be nice to me, I'm saying like every one of us, we use software, right? Like we use open source stuff. I mean, Composer as well is built with other libraries, so just every one of us uses it. And like what thinking about all this taught me is that like when I interact with other projects, I see what I'm going to make them feel bad, I see it because I experienced all that. So I'm like, oh, okay, no, this is not a nice comment. I'm just gonna wait 5 minutes and, you know, rewrite it a bit nicer. And so I hope that by sharing all this, I also get you to be nicer, just because maybe you see my point of view. So yeah, it's just, I think it's all this big process of open source, as I mentioned. Like it's something, by using open source, you become part of open source, and you kind of should feel the obligation to contribute as well. So if you're not contributing yet, just think about it, don't be scared, and maybe like on Monday, just send an issue or pull request somewhere. That's it. Thank you very much. if you're looking for the slides, they're online at this address. And if you want to leave feedback, there's the joined in site, but I don't know, like there are only a few of the talks I think on it, so maybe it's not so great. You can also just go put like a lot of like buttons on the and yeah, if there are any questions, I'm not sure if there is any time left. Not really, because questions.
I want to say I like Composer. I want to say thank you. You save many time for me, and I think for other developers. It's great job.
Thanks.
Yeah, Ukrainian, I think I'm not wrong if I would say from whole Ukrainian community that we really appreciate your work and we really thank you for this job.
Well, thank you.
By the way, is there any kind of, I don't know, initiative that helps to help to support people who work a lot on open source? I mean, maybe some donating systems or something like that.
Well, so that's is the mic still on? Or?
Yeah.
That's something that I've been thinking about a lot, because obviously it's a big problem for me, and I know it's also a big problem for many others. That yeah, you invest a lot of time, and at some point it becomes kind of a danger to your like professional life or personal life, or like it's very hard to balance this plus everything else. But no, like there is no, as far as I know, there's no decent, central way to really help people. I mean, sure, you can give them $20 on PayPal or something, but it's like, in my experience, having a donate button does not help, because people don't care. It's just, I mean, I get it. I also rarely donate to anything, but it's just we're not used to this, like going and donating on something. We're just not used to it. Like, people have a mindset of either I pay for something or it's like open source free. And so yeah, it's a very difficult question, but I don't have really a good answer. Like I tried with this torrent proxy project, I tried to fix that for me at least. Like, it doesn't help all the others, but it doesn't really help me enough either. But it's an attempt, right? Like at saying, okay, here's a product around the open source stuff, so if you pay that, it pays for the open source development as well. I think that's one of the potential solutions, but it's not applicable to every library as well. Like, depending on the project, I think you have different ways of like monetizing it or finding like revenue streams. So it's a bit a long question for maybe another conference.
Yeah. I know that there is a project where people like add some idea and start gathering money for this idea.
Yes.
Maybe it should be a project where people like put their favorite open source guy and it's like say like help this guy to earn some money to do more great job.
Yeah, I think that's interesting. There, like you have I forgot the name, but like Bounty Source or something. Lets you do that, right? Lets you put some bitcoins on an issue number or something, and you say, okay, if this gets down, you get the bitcoins. The problem is, like, if you remember the first graph I showed with the time spent on this and that, is like, for the maintainer, actually coding becomes a very small part, and if you're just paid for the coding stuff, it doesn't really help, right? Like, you would need to kind of say, okay, if I spend like 10 hours maintaining the project and responding to issues on GitHub, then I get the bitcoins. I don't know, it's difficult. You see, but yeah.
Okay, thank you.
I mean, I'm happy to discuss it later as well. Like, we shouldn't make a huge debate of this right now, but it's definitely an interesting question.
Hi.
Hey.
So I haven't heard a word deadline from your speech. Basically, my
question. Can you just put yeah.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Good. I haven't heard a word deadline from your speech. Basically, one thought have come to my mind that you can keep nice relationship with you guys just because absence of deadlines. Is that correct?
That's interesting. So you say that people are nicer in open source because they don't have deadlines, right? Okay. I never thought of it that way, but I mean, again, if you look at the Linux guys, I don't think they're very nice to each other, so I don't know. I'm not sure if there is a direct relationship, but it's interesting. Yeah, I don't. Any other question? Yeah.
Thanks a lot for your talk. I have a small question, I think. How the fact of composer creation affected your career, your work, your job?
Yeah, that's another long question.
Sorry.
So how did it affect my life and career and everything? I guess career-wise, interestingly, I think it's like contributing to open source overall, or I would say joining the community, even if you don't necessarily have a big project. I think just being involved in the community can be just, you know, talking to people on Twitter. It's still like community stuff. I think this tends to have a very good like side effect on your career, just because people know you, and if you're looking for a job, you have access to many people that, you know, that have good connections, and you probably are gonna be able to find a better job. On the downside, I would say, like if I wanna do the composer job like seriously, then it takes me a lot of time, which means I can't really like get a full-time job anymore, you know. it's like it's good because I can find one easily, but I can't really have one. So it's a bit of a tricky situation, but I think that's only true if you get to really like larger scale projects, where it becomes kind of a job in its own. So it's difficult.
Thank you.
That's it. Last call. Well. All right. Thank you.